and happy Wellness Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the IDCA Wellness for Tech podcast, where we focus on empowering current and emerging technology leaders and those inspired by technology to lead well from within. My name is Jyoti Dugar, the Chaos Guru, and I'm so proud and excited to be your host for this unique and truly revolutionary podcast, a first of its kind. As a C-suite IT leader and executive myself, having been in the industry for decades, I understand all too well how chaotic and stressful and high pressure the technology field can be and ever so demanding. And I'm truly excited to bring inspirational leaders in this space to help all of us and all of you lead well from within and harness the power of chaos to not just survive, but thrive. Today, I'm honored to be joined by our guest, Vivek Nigam. Vivek is the founder and CEO of BeRemote LLC, which is focused on employee wellness in the hybrid workplace. Vivek has had a 30-plus year career in technology and strategic roles dating back to his early days as a software engineer, leading him to found a startup in the Washington, D.C. area, where he was the CTO and ultimately sold that company to AOL in 2000 for a positive exit. Since then, Vivek has made a career as an architect and technology leader at several Hartford-based insurance companies, in addition to now his most current role being the CEO of BeRemote. I am so grateful and thankful to have Vivek on our third podcast episode today. Welcome, Vivek. We are so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you, Jyoti. My pleasure to be on your podcast. We're looking forward to this.
And I know we've had several great conversations, and you are such a role model to everyone out there to really showcase how you can be in multiple different industries and find ways to join everything together when you focus on people and the value that people bring to everything. So let's jump right in. I am really excited to have this podcast today with you. I'm sure everyone would love to hear about how internal wellness from a mind, body, and energy perspective factors into our external environments, especially in the technology field. So Vivek, in your role, how do you foster and empower staff to prioritize their health and wellness over all else?
Yeah, great question, Jyoti. And we view health and wellness from a perspective of people's value, right? People, especially employees, they have a strong need to have an impact and to have their voice be heard. And a lot of what we hear today with things like the Great Resignation is a lot about people and their internal value and their alignment with the company culture. So we at BeRemote try to spend time learning about each other and focusing on each other as human beings. Right? Work is important, but learning about each other is equally important. And we find that sharing information on a personal level goes a long way to building a strong team. And I've always found when you talk to people about how they're doing and not just what they're doing, the work always gets better. And that was something that was a revelation for me years and years ago, and something I spent a lot of time studying and really embrace that fully. Where at BeRemote we try to learn about what's going on in each other's lives, and we try to put a priority on family time and personal growth, and make sure that what we're doing at work is meeting some of those goals. So, that's a lot of factors that kind of fall into how do we make people focus on, being less stressed, being productive, feeling valued. And all those things to me, they may sound kind of functional, but they all start to factor into what is wellness all about. And they're values that I hold, and they're values that I try to embody within everybody here. And it's not always easy, right? We get people who are super talented and they come and work for us, and and their previous jobs was all about getting the work done and being task managers. And sometimes it takes a little training to say, sometimes it's not just, hey, show me the numbers. Sometimes it's about, well, what else is going on and how can we help? And fostering that type of attitude. So, and you'll see that some of these things are built into the platform that we build as well. They're all about, let's get to know each other on a personal level. Let's operate as a team. And what I find is when people like the people they work with, they gain some trust in the environment and people gain appreciation for each other. And the environment gets better, the work gets better, and we have the ability to help each other work through issues. So to me, all that kind of factors into wellness. There's other tactics that we use. We have flexible work schedules. We do prioritize family events. I don't support people missing kids' concerts and soccer games because we have XYZ to do. We need to be smart and find ways to be able to back each other up so that each of us can spend the time to do these things. I know raising my kids, I always wanted to have quantity time with my kids and my family and my friends, and not just trying to find the small slices of quality time. Our company is called BeRemote. So in a remote world today, we can send texts from anywhere, right? If you're at the Grand Canyon with your family and something comes up, there's probably a break you get at some point. You can send a quick text and then go back to enjoying your family time. All those things are really important, just managing people on a human level. And really at the core of that to me is find a way for the team to appreciate each other, get to know each other on more than a work level. And I find that always brings out a lot of positivity.
That's great. The factor that you mentioned of really getting to know people for who they are from a holistic standpoint, not just the work that they do or the role that they're in the workplace, truly does make a difference, because you're not just looking at them in one capacity. You're looking at them as a whole person, which I'm sure is valued by your employees. Now, I know you have a really interesting story on how even the concept of your company came about. You being a technology leader in the technology space for over 30 years. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what made you leave those roles and form your own company? And it wasn't just a technology company that you developed. It was a company that's focused on people and employee wellness.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that question. Really, really important and passionate area for me. So, and a little history, right? Growing up, I was born in India and came to the US when I was very young, and I observed my father and all the struggles that he had just adapting to the social culture. And that's in the US and probably everywhere. It's in any organization. That's an important factor of people feeling comfortable and people being able to succeed and being able to reach out and get noticed. And what I found when I was managing people, I would always find that on a team, you'd have maybe 2 or 3 people that were very comfortable, and they'd be able to, always had something to say and were able to reach out to people and weren't afraid and socially very comfortable with these type of environments. But inevitably, you'd have a few people that very, very talented, but they wouldn't speak the same way. They were kind of quiet. And there, you would always see a difference in the opportunities and the careers of those two different types of people. So I always felt that wasn't right. So my genesis of this was to say, let's find a way to get the people who are much quieter, for whatever reason, and there is a variety of reasons why that may be, and give them the opportunity to, and I use the term, have an equitable voice, right? Let's level that social playing field so that people who are quieter have an equal opportunity to have their voice heard, have their contribution shown as the other members of the team. And so early on, I started to research, like, how do I get people to speak up? And there's a lot of great books written about this and a lot of great research. and keeps getting better and better. And the first time I did this, I had some great success. I had somebody who was very quiet, and I had to give a presentation to the whole team on this new topic that we were doing, and I mean, it was just brilliant. I mean, she was just off the charts great, and I kind of felt, walking away, that she just never had that opportunity. So fast forward a few years, and really got to get a passion for this, and decided, we should do this on a much greater scale. And that really was the concept that started BeRemote and where we're going.
That is great. It is so important when somebody else can see the potential in you, and you might not see it for yourself. And when you're put in a situation or culture or work unit or really anywhere where you might not have the confidence in yourself to speak up, especially if you're surrounded by people that are more confident in themselves, or just have the innate capacity to present themselves in a way that's comfortable for them, but might not be comfortable for you. It really does take somebody else from the outside who can see that potential in you to bring that out of you. And it takes a special person to even create that kind of comfortable environment that you feel confident enough to take those steps to really help others out there. So kudos to you for being that person.
Thank you, Connie. I mean, I've had the fortune, and I think that's probably the right word. It's a little bit of luck to have had some leaders that I had the presence to be around, who showed me the way, right? Showed how you can be empathetic, how you can be, aware of watching people and giving people opportunities. And early on, I mean, I grew up as an engineer, and wore glasses. I mean, I was very stereotypical engineer and very analytical, and I also had to learn. But and you are 100% right in saying that it's not a journey that typically happens in isolation, right? That is something that, if you're fortunate enough to find a mentor, somebody who can guide you along the way, show you, and be patient with you to walk through the mistakes that you'll make, but really help you and coach you and show you how those things work. I had the same thing, and really became a strong driver for things I've done during my career.
That's great. That's great. I know my typical second question is usually, how does your organization help employees with their well-being, and have those efforts proven to be effective? I know you touched a lot on that in your response to the first question. I would actually like to ask you, based on our conversations, you prioritize your own well-being for yourself, and therefore you're able to lead others. And we've mentioned some new capabilities that you're looking to implement in this BeRemote tool, of meditation rooms, or bringing in outside wellness providers to offer that to your employees. Can you tell us about what did something prompt you in your life, or was there any sort of moment that you felt you really started prioritizing your own wellness, or is this something that you just did even from in your younger ages in the technology industry?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really important question. So I believe a lot in introspection, and I touched on a little bit earlier where I came to the U.S. when I was very young. I was actually born in India, but my father had left early on, and he left when I was a year old. And my mother, my brother, and I didn't come here for a couple more years. So it was, I was 3. So if you think about a 1-year-old child, and then 3 or 4 years later, I really didn't know who he was, right? So I hadn't, and back then we weren't cell phones and videos and all those type of things.
Right.
But now growing up, with that environment and going through the things that we had to go through, trying to adapt to new cultures, and we moved a lot, going to different different schools sometimes every year. We had to move to a different school every second year. You learn a lot to rely on yourself and to understand who you are. And then, you know, with that type of environment, I had a lot of very strong people around me, but even with that, sometimes you need to learn to rely on yourself. And then, um, I heard this podcast about 10 years ago. I just want to give it a little plug because it had a real impact on me. It's Neil Pasricha. He had this podcast, I think it's about 10, 12 years old, called The 3 A's of Awesome. And the 3 A's, real quickly, are attitude, awareness, and authenticity. And Neil does a masterful job of presenting a wonderful story, and he has some of the same challenges I did. Immigrating. I think he went to Canada, right? So we're very similar approaches and some of the challenges that you see. But it taught me at that time to think about, and I thought I was doing these things pretty well. Just that podcast really was a pivotal moment for me. Just being self-aware and having the right attitude in the right moments. And the last one is one that I really embraced fully, which is authenticity. So when we talk about just being, our self-wellness, and you think about, well, who am I? What are the things that I need? During my day, I'll go through and life gets really chaotic, right? So during a day, you go through, and sometimes I'll even just start walking around, and literally, it's the old cliche about walking in circles. But there's so much information and so many things that happen. It's having that awareness and being authentic to who you are that sometimes will give you a moment to say, okay, wait a minute, let me pause. There's all these stresses, there's all these different things in your day. And let's just pause for a second and let's find a better routine. So that started me on a journey of saying, there's a better way to work. And let's find different routines during the day. There's a morning routine, there's a after routine, there's a night routine. Sometimes it's unplanned. It's just that the world is just coming after you, right? So what do? You have to pause for a moment and find the thing that's going to settle your mind. Sometimes it's meditation. Sometimes it's just going outside and feeling the sun for a moment. Sometimes it's just having to stretch or sit down and turn the technology off for a moment. I mean, there's a variety of things that I've learned to react with, and just on a personal level, right? And just to think about, when you go through all those different self-reliance pieces, you have to sometimes just say, I have to remember who I am, be aware of where I am, and refocus your attitude so that you can get back to functioning at the level that you want. There's a variety of techniques, and my routine typically starts with some isolation and quiet time, and I like to do it outside. But I live up here in the Northeast, so not always outside is not always the place to do it, but it's a way to kind of clear your mind, right? And get your day focused. And I always like to look at my calendar before I do this so that I can kind of focus on what my day is going to look like and kind of plan the gaps in my day. But I know other people do it in many different ways. Yeah.
Yes, that is a robust answer. There's so many different parts that I would love to jump more into. The first aspect, as you mentioned, authenticity, and that is a important factor in my life. I feel like just being a minority woman in the technology space and in the cybersecurity field as well for the last 2 decades of my life, I felt that I really couldn't be authentic, or I felt like I couldn't be authentic because people weren't open to that. And being a leader as a female, I am, if you can't tell by this podcast, I'm normally positive, optimistic, chirpy, high energy.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I felt that, and I also look fairly young for my age, which you would think is a blessing, which I still think of it as a blessing. But in my career, it actually hasn't quite worked out that way where I thought of it as a blessing because people didn't take me seriously. And I've had several people tell me over the course of, my career that, oh, you need to be more serious. You need to, act more like a man. You need to wear suits. You need to not be so positive and optimistic. So I've always felt that, oh, okay, so I should just pretend to be someone that I'm really not. And you can only do that for a matter of time before it gets old, you get tired, you get burnt out because you're trying to take on a different identity it's just not you. And
that's actually, I mean, I'm glad you shared that. That's actually really brilliant, because if you think about, and I think anybody listening to this will listen to all the things that people had told you to do and think, well, that's not right. Right. And that's not right. It's and this is the journey that I think we're on, and that it's the fight that we need to fight. And I really love that word fight. Maybe it's the evolution we need to make, where, I mean, I really believe in authenticity. And one of the beauties of, coming into this remote world, as much as COVID and the pandemic was very hard on everybody, if we look at some of the benefits here, people are starting to embrace their independence and embrace their authenticity. And this is, I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine, and she was, we're kind of geeking out on this for a little while. And, but it's a really positive thing, where if we can embrace each other for who we are, and then we can be authentic, think about all the things that we don't have to spend energy on, being fake, right? Being somebody we're not. And then we can really get inspired work done. And I think that's really an important aspect. So a lot of what we're doing with the platform we're building, it's video and audio based versus email, and we're trying to reduce the dependency on email. And part of the reason is emails tend to be formal. Even if you send a really quick email, you check your language. We've gotten into the habit of making some formalities there. I think we're probably doing a video as well. But with this platform, we're asking people to be authentic. When you say thank you to somebody, do it in a video and be authentic, be sincere. Hey, thank you for your help. And we as human beings will see that, and we read the verbal cues, and that really does go a long way. So yeah, that authenticity piece, I think it's a very powerful one. And I love the story you shared, and really does drive even more the direction we need to go.
And, the other point of that is when you can be authentic or feel comfortable being your best self and your authentic self in a situation or an environment, it completely changes your energy. And people can feel that, when you're not being authentic, or you feel like, oh, you have to be a certain way in this environment to fit in to the culture or societal pressures or mindset, then you carry a different energy to you or from you. And people feel that energy. They can feel like something is off. Maybe they can't pinpoint what is off, but they can feel that, oh, you're not being yourself. And if you can't be yourself, then that like you said, it affects your work, it affects your personal life, it affects everything that you do. So it's great that you're promoting that within your organization. So people not only are happier, they feel like they can be themselves. They're not trying to be someone they're not. And it's being appreciated and valued. It's not just something like, okay, we're just doing this to check off the box for some sort of policy or rule that came out.
Yeah. No, we as a people, we as a team, I fully believe we are much more powerful because of our diversity, right? Because of our diversity of thought and our different experiences. That's what brings us together. If everybody thought the same way, guess what? We'd all make the same decision, and may or may not be the right one. We might get lucky, right?
Right.
But that diversity, that appreciation for different experiences, I think it's something very strong, and really does help us find better solutions and better directions. So yeah, I love the direction you went there. So
sure. And the other thing that you mentioned was rituals. So that's a great segue to the next question that we usually ask is, do you have a morning ritual that enables your day? How do you start your mornings? Because as we know, every successful person has some sort of morning ritual that really sets the pace of their day to adjust to all the chaos. But you mentioned you have multiple rituals. Is that something you'd be willing to share with our audience? Like, what are your morning or evening or night rituals that you mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to go through them. These are things that have worked for me, and I think different people adjust in different ways. And so I do a variety of different things, but typically I like to be awake before everybody else, so I get some quiet time. And typically, I like to be outside. We actually, fortunate where I live, I have a nice little deck in the back with some woods and some trees, and usually the birds make a lot of noise out there. And I mean, it's really nothing. It's just a neighborhood, but boy, it feels like a sanctuary to me. And my morning routine is usually in a nice, crisp, cool, or warm enough morning. I'll go outside and like say, I usually look at my calendar and know what I'm about to do for the day, and then go out there and spend about 5 to 10 minutes and just give it some quiet time. And I've been taught with meditations, and you can call this a meditation, but it is a mindfulness session for sure. We're trying to clear your mind, and I'm one who clearing my mind is a very difficult thing for me to do. But what I will do is I'll either repeat a word or there's some chants that we had growing up, some Indian chants, some American chants, and some different things, and just to help kind of settle the mind and relax your body. And when I know I've finally gotten there is typically I feel the tension usually around my ears kind of settles down, and I said, okay, now I'm good, and then I get on with my day. That's usually my morning routine. It doesn't happen every morning. We work in multiple time zones, so on many occasions, my phone is starting to make noises before I get out of bed, and the first text message often happens before I actually roll out of bed, because there's people in different time zones who are already sending some questions over. But for the most part, I like to have that quiet moment of mindfulness to get started. Usually during the day. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's great that you mentioned that even if you're a person that might not appreciate the actual act of meditation, because a lot of people face the challenge of quieting your mind, and they feel like they're too wired or thinking of different things, and it's too hard to meditate. But the fact that you mentioned sometimes it's just, as long as you can just be mindful of things that you do, and maybe not do. One thing that I've learned over the years, very similar to what you're saying, is even brushing your teeth. You don't have to choose a 20-minute time period or a 40-minute time period where you're not doing anything. You can maybe incorporate these different tactics into your normal day for things that you already are going to do, like brushing your teeth. So instead of thinking of all the things you need to get done in the day, or thinking of the things that you didn't get done yesterday, you can choose to be mindful in that 2 to 5 minutes that you're going to take to brush your teeth, to just focus on the feeling of brushing your teeth and trying to quiet your mind while you're brushing your teeth.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that a lot. I do a corollary to that, which is during the day when I have a break, and this is the beauty of working remote, is I'll take a walk. And middle of the day, usually nobody else is out, and very few people, or a handful of people, and you'll say hi to people as you're walking by. But in that case, one technique is just to feel your footsteps, every step you take, and feel the step, and feel the step, and feel the step, and that actually really goes a long way to regaining your focus. So to me, that's somewhat similar to what you're talking about with brushing your teeth.
Yes.
But then that is certainly a nice way during the day, as all the different forces are coming your way, and you need sometimes you start spinning from one to the next. Do I start task 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5? Which one do I do? sometimes you just need a 10-minute, let me just focus on my footsteps and then come back. And then you say, okay, we're starting on number 3 and let's go.
Yeah. Sounds like what we're saying is focus on, one of your 5 senses to kind of release your logical brain from being on, work overload. Maybe focus on touch or smell or sight or your physical sense. How does your feet feel when you're walking? When you're brushing your teeth, how does the brush feel on your teeth? And just focusing on a physiological sense instead of a analytical or logical, using your logical or analytical brain, which can also be a way to put your mind at ease. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. And I do know there's some, some services out there with some meditations, and I do sometimes bring in a voice, right? So somebody who is doing a guided meditation, and it's recorded, it's usually not live, but and has a message to the meditation. Depending on what I'm about to do, sometimes those things are helpful as well. And you can do that while you're doing other things. I know each one says don't do this while you're driving, but sometimes in the car it just kind of helps you settle down and get the stress of traffic out of your way, things like that too. Sure. But like doing something like that while you're walking on occasion helps as well. I love where you went with the senses, because I think that's an important factor to gaining your focus back. Pick one of your senses and focus on that. And I know there's people who are very good at that. They can regain focus very quickly. And that's So for me, it's been with the walk that helps for sure.
You mentioned that you can do these techniques starting your day and maybe at the end of the day. That kind of leads to our next question on all of us are facing a lot of chaos and changes on a daily basis. And a lot of us fear the chaos or massive changes that are happening, maybe not even in our personal life, but also in our careers or other aspects in our life. The one thing that we know for sure is that change is the only constant in life. So how do you navigate any chaos that comes into your life? Do you follow one structure or framework for all the chaos, not just in the technology field, but in your personal life? And do you incorporate some of these techniques that you mentioned while in the middle of the chaos?
And it's a great question. I was trying to think about how to answer this question. So, let me give a little history. I've always enjoyed trying to do different things and always been a learner and sometimes pride myself on being a teacher. And I hope that's true. And I hope I'm aware enough to believe that is true. So I've embraced change and chaos. And to me, chaos is, there's 2 sides of chaos. There's the chaos that comes after you where you're kind of the recipient. And there's the chaos that's just part of your flow, right? So there's a variety of different things. So, and I would say that we all actually do a lot of things in our day. We've got work, we've got personal lives, right? We have some hobbies. And oddly enough, I really didn't have any hobbies until I was kind of in my early 30s. I kind of did. I played music growing up and always enjoyed that, but I kind of let that go when work started and really just focused on working and learning technology and being in that space. Somewhere in my 30s, I said, well, let me pick up a hobby. And ever since then, it's been somewhat, I'm not sure exactly what the word is, but I've had a dedication to it, to learning different things. And so I started with photography at one point and really took that as far as I could. And there was a period of time where I thought I was going to switch gears and become a professional photographer. And I was, I remember we did a photo shoot for a car one day, which was just amazing. And it ended up on the cover of the Porsche owners magazine, which was pretty cool, right? That was pretty neat, and very cool. That was a little bit of a surprise. We submitted it, and me and the person who owned the car, we submitted it. It was a friend of mine, and so things like that, was just one of those things that, hey, this is something completely different. And then, over the years, I picked up other things, right? And always had a passion for software, and then, picked up different sports that you play. And in my mid 30s, I started skiing in my mid 30s, and then I started playing golf in my later 30s. And so to me, this is all about, when I think about chaos, I think about the different things that you can do. So I've always embraced the change, embraced different things, and kind of enjoy when things go a little bit differently. But with all that, each one of those I prepare differently. So for a while, I played in a golf league, and got very competitive. And on my way there, I would put on a specific meditation that would focus my mind and remind myself, okay, this is what you can do, this is what you can do. And when you're learning, all that stuff is not natural. So that was one way of focusing down. And then before the game, I would find some quiet space, and it's just me swinging the club, right? When we did a photo shoot, it was a completely different thing. It wasn't a meditation time. I was thinking about, okay, well, how are we going to set up the lighting? What are we going to do here? How do I interact with the people? Very people focused thing. So each one for me was very different. And unfortunately, it's a space that we could probably talk for days on, right? So what are the characteristics of this activity versus that activity that might be a little bit different? If you watch professional athletes, which I always watch with great admiration, these are people who have dedicated their life pretty much to one craft. But in many cases, you'll watch professional athletes, and they're usually good at multiple sports. It's not just one, although we always think of them as one. But they're usually great athletes first, and then better at a specific sport, maybe second. But we always view them as being at the sport first. But when you watch their morning routines, their pre-game routines, there's a very specific, and it's a very lengthy preparation. So I always watch that with great admiration. And I kind of think of it the same way, that for each different activity that you do, it takes time to come up with that routine. But once you get it, it's a matter of repeating it, and then maybe once in a while tweaking it to see how that works. So yeah, I've been doing that for many years with some good success.
That's a great segue into, are there any simple wellness hacks you can offer people that you do throughout the day? You mentioned a few things already, maybe taking a walk, getting some fresh air, feeling your footsteps. Because one concept that I truly believe in is, if you're not able to dedicate a specific period of time in a day, and where you have a lengthy period of time, which most of us generally don't, especially being in the technology world, and especially if you have kids or families to attend to as well. But one aspect that I found truly helpful in my own life is to try to spend maybe 5 minutes every hour or every 2 hours, where you can still do the same things, but just break it apart into bits and chunks. And as long as you do that throughout the day, during your waking hours, you can still replenish your energy and rejuvenate yourself as you go along. And one analogy that I always give is race car drivers, where at every race they still come to a complete stop, where they get their cars looked at and fueled and things like that. But I'm sure they're spending those few moments while their car is being looked at to just focus on their own internal peace and try to get to a neutral state, so they can continue on in the race and maybe at a faster pace, or get rejuvenate their energy. So if they can do it, my concept is that all of us can do it too, and not look at it as wasting time, or, hey, in this 5 minutes, I could have done this other task. But at the end of the day, you just feel burned out and stressed. So Is there anything that you do maybe throughout the day that really helps you rejuvenate yourself?
Yeah. And by the way, I love that race car analogy, and I'm going to shamelessly use that in the future. I love that. I think that's actually a really good analogy, and it kind of reminded me too that traditionally, and if you think 50s, 70 years ago, the workplace would look like you would have some fixed breaks during the day, and as we've evolved, and have a little bit more flexibility in our day, and depending on the job and the type of thing that you have, taking that few minutes is so critically important. For me, it takes a couple of different forms, and I typically will do either the walk, right, or sometimes I'll just go out and feel the sun. Those things for me work for helping me to rejuvenate. But there are occasions where I just need a little bit of noise, and I'll put some headphones on and blast the music. And it feels like sometimes it just kind of, you know, wipes the cobwebs away. It shakes things up. But so I do that on occasion, but typically it's a little bit more in the quiet time, trying to give yourself a few minutes to go and grab a glass of water and go walk by the garden, go walk, sit in a field of grass, or just find a little one circle around the building, right? That type of thing. Those type of things, every couple of hours. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's really critical to help you recharge. But like I say, sometimes it takes the other effect. Like if I'm driving from one place to another, I'll close the windows and let the music go. And sometimes you just need that. You need that get the energy back, and something about the different sounds and the different music that you listen to. It does have a definite effect on mind and body. Both quiet music, different tones, high tones, low tones. Sometimes it's just volume. Might be why a lot of us just love to go to concerts. There's something very exhilarating about that type of thing. So yeah, for me, it takes a couple of different forms. But like I say, predominantly 80% of the time, it is let me get a moment to go get some fresh air and get out. And I'll probably do that 2 or 3 times a day, and really helps me focus.
That's great. So it looks like there's multiple ways of clearing your mind. Doesn't have to be. Sometimes you might need that quietness and just stillness, and sometimes you just might need the opposite. Just blast some music and maybe add in a little dancing.
Right, exactly.
I'm always blasting music in my house and dancing, so my children always make fun of me, like, wow, it's like it's a club in here every day.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
you don't need to go somewhere. You can play your own music and still have fun. And it's great that you said that, because it makes everything fun, even if you're doing something that's not so fun. So if you're cleaning out the house, or if you're doing a task in your job that it's not really your cup of tea, you would rather not do it. But if you just make it fun in some way, shape, or form, it'll that energy will carry you through it. So you can be done with it faster and maybe more efficient, and maybe it won't have such a adverse impact on your health if you think of it as kind of in a grudging sort of way.
Right. And all these things, I suspect, will reduce cortisol, they reduce stress, and
yes,
I mean, that's always good, right?
Yes.
That's always a healthy thing. And it goes back to a little bit of what we're saying about being authentic and regaining our independence, and those type of things are very healthy. And just from a life happiness perspective and factor, and anything that makes you happy in life is going to make you happy at work. I mean, those things typically are conjoined, right? I mean, we're not just a work human being and a home human being. All those things put together. So, yeah, I love where you went there too. And when you have those moments, and if you're dancing around the house and your kids are making fun of you, that's a wonderful moment.
Right. It definitely is. And like, it's they. And at some point they follow along,
Right.
and which is great, because we go out to events or even restaurants, and when they play a song that's our favorite, they just start dancing, and people are watching like, what are they doing here? And then they start taking videos, but then eventually they appreciate, like, wow, they know how to have fun, and they know how to be in the moment, and really, like you said, goes back to authenticity. If I had raised them like, well, nope, you can't do that. You can't do that in public, because what are people going to think of you? And then, it kind of shuts them off from being themselves. And we make sometimes as parents, we do that. And what are we really training our children to be then? If you can't be authentic, as long as you're not hurting anyone. I mean, you can't say you punch someone in the face, but I was just being authentic,
It's a great point because, if you think about the business world, a lot of what we're taught in the business world when we first get there is first thing you do is shut off your emotions. And,
right.
You had told the story about the guidance you had gotten. And, we do a little bit of studying of people's behaviors that are using our platform. And, because we do a lot of audio and video, some of the things that we've been studying is about when do you know that there's a behavioral inflection? And so I tell this story sometimes about if you see a speech by a business professional, sometimes an executive will come out and in the same breath they'll say, in a very monotone way, they'll say, I'm very disappointed about our results in the last quarter, but in the same breath they'll say, and I'm very excited about our prospects in the future. And there's no difference in those statements. It's just what we've been taught in the business world, where with a little bit of authenticity, a little bit of emotion, and I think all these things are changing. We can really gain a lot, and really bring that into the workplace, not just in our personal lives, and really have people really enjoy being there. And it doesn't have to be so dry and professional all the time. So that's our hope.
That's a great point. Before we jump into the next question that you brought up, do you feel that there's a difference between a male leader showing emotion versus a female leader showing emotion, and how is that regarded differently, or do you feel like it's the same?
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's it's a topic that go really deep, and I think different individuals show emotions in different ways, and but I think what we find, especially in the workplace, when emotion is shown, it's either done very planfully or it's done because something is not right. So in both cases, are there differences? I do believe that there are differences. However, when we study these things, we focus more on what is the difference from the norm, right? So it isn't about, are you this age group, or are you male or female, or this ethnicity. It is really about if we see 6 months worth of data on how you operate, how this one person operates, and now we see a deviation from that norm, that's significant, right? And that's something that we need to pay attention to. And I think we as human beings kind of notice that, because we'll make perspectives and we'll make profiles within our heads about every person that we talk to and every person that we meet and we interact with, we get comfortable with. And we'll know when a person does something that, oh, that didn't seem right. That was a little unusual. We say this all the time. Like, somebody will leave a room and we're like, that was kind of strange. But what was strange for that person may not be strange for another. And so the male female thing, I think, is pretty deep. That could be a conversation that goes on, with a lot of science behind that. But my personal experience has been it varies from individual to individual. I've seen men that were very emotional and women that were not, and both vice versa, right? So but when we see one person that we've interacted with and we finally find something that says that didn't seem right, that's a moment for us to be able to say, okay, let's take a pause and let's go spend some time. One of the things we built into our platform is a simple way of doing check-ins, and it's somewhat related to that type of conversation of finding something different from the norm. Very simple way of doing a check-in, and typically what you'll see is pretty much every time the response is the same. There's 6 or 7 different responses you can give, and but that one time when it's different, we all notice, and that's a simple way to say, let's notice before it becomes something bigger and before it becomes an emotional event. And I probably dodged your question, and I apologize for that.
No, not at all. I mean, that's a great aspect of the tool that you have in trying to it might even be taking preventative measures, or maybe not preventative, but proactive measures,
Yeah.
where if you're a leader and you ask how someone's doing, and they're putting some sort of emotion into the response using the tool, I would think a good leader would pay attention to that. And I know we've talked before, and you mentioned little by little, employees feel more comfortable in expressing how they truly feel, not just saying, "Oh, I'm good, life's great."
And our big win will be when we get the managers of that team also expressing, hey, maybe I'm not quite right, because
exactly.
We tend to fall into this trap of hey, I'm the manager, I need to be stronger, I need to be right, and some of that is correct, but we have to also remember that we all have other things going on in our lives, and so if we can get to that point where even though one person is playing the role of a manager on this team, that person is still a member of the team and sometimes still needs some extra attention and care, right? So
I am so glad you went there, because that is exactly symbolic of an experience I had in just recent months, where I was going through a very personal situation in my family life, and being a female in this male-dominated technology world, and mom of three, I always felt like, okay, I don't have time to focus on myself. Like, I need to, my job is to focus on others, my kids, my team. I felt like I had to be a leader 24/7 and nurture others. And therefore I needed to put on this strong front. And going back to being authentic, I felt like, okay, well, I can still be authentic, but yet I still need to be this strong figure, almost, super mom, super woman, super this, super boss, and I have to be the perfect at everything, and I can't show any sort of what I felt was weaknesses, which are truly not weaknesses, until one day where it was just too much, and I knew I wasn't being my best, because it's impossible to be perfect at everything, especially when you have a pretty chaotic situation going on in one aspect of your life. And I just broke down. I just told my team, like, look, I need a break. I wasn't my best self. And I told them what was going on in my personal life. And I just told them, hey, can someone else kind of run with this for me? And I thought, in my mind, I thought, okay, they're not going to take this too well, and I'm not going to look good. And in fact, the opposite happened, where I think literally one of my associates, colleagues basically said, wow, like, you finally showed that you're actually human in a good way, right? Like, we just thought that's a great moment. It was like, we thought you're just this, someone that came from the outer planet, because we're like, does she never have any moments where she needs help?
that cape you wear is detachable. I didn't know that.
Right. And they said, hey, and you know what? From that point onwards, they're like, we got this, we got it covered. Awesome. You do your thing, and we're there for you, and you've always been there for us, and now it's our turn. And they took it, they ran with it. But since that standpoint, I created these touch points for each of them, and like your tool, we didn't have your tool at the time. So we just did verbal check-ins, where instead of just jumping into the concept of the topic of the meeting, I would just say, hey, we're going to take the first 5 minutes to go around the room, and each of you just express how you're truly feeling in 3 words. And that's brilliant. Like how you observed, initially they're like, good, great, it's sunny,
Make you happy. Yep, exactly. Yeah.
But eventually they really express, themselves, some people say distraught, emotional, or there's actually start putting out words that truly express how they feel. And it's not that I felt that, I have to do something about this at the moment, but it was helpful for me to understand, this person's feeling overwhelmed or sad or anxious today about something that's going on in their lives. And that doesn't excuse, poor conduct or behavior or performance, but it adds a different layer or context to the situation. So you can have more compassion and empathy for them. Like, oh, okay, something really drastic is going on in your life. So it opens channels for them to talk to you about it if they choose to, or just express like, hey, this is going on in my life. I'm not making excuses for my work, but I just maybe we can figure out a different way to still get things done, or maybe just be more flexible, with the timings or, your schedule and things like that. Right. So, I can see that you might be seeing the trends as people start using your tool and the capabilities of the tool. You might, I'm sure you probably notice, like maybe people are feeling more authentic and expressing themselves.
Yeah. And, I love that story because that really achieves the goals that we're trying to really do on a broad scale, which is the team should take care of itself, right? The team should take care of the team. And, you highlighted another thing there that, and even on our team, 2 of our lead developers are women of color and in a technology world. And this is, you see the pressure, you see the desire for them, and they're a different generation. They're younger and probably in their 20s, most likely. And they do have a lot of pressure. And I do think women do put a lot more pressure on themselves to be perfect at so many different things and so many different aspects. It's not that men don't put the pressure on it. They just generally, they deal with it differently. Everyone cracks under pressure at some point, but there are behaviors that we need to continue to work on, just in the workplace to help each other, right? Everybody, nobody needs to be Superwoman or Superman and take it all on themselves. We really are trying to promote, let the team take it on, right? And when we do it together, it's going to be better, right? And it's going to be better. I just love the story that your team came to you and said, okay, we got this. And when you're ready, you're going to come back and we're going to resume. And I love that. That's really where we want people to go. So that was great.
And it's sometimes you might not have that kind of team or people that you're working with, or maybe you don't even have a team that can take things on. But I feel like as long as you can show your vulnerability and your authenticity, that's the best you can do to let people know, hey, you're going through something. You're not making excuses for yourself, but you're just adding some context to, you might not be your best 24/7. And here's why. And you're trying not to take it out on them, but you also need a sense of a little bit of grace, maybe during that period of time, which you should have for yourself.
Simon Sinek does a great, he has a lot of great statements. There's one that I really appreciate, and it can take multiple forms, and I'm going to paraphrase how he said it, but he said, if you're talking to somebody and their numbers are off for the last quarter, you can ask them, hey, your numbers are off. What are you going to do to make them better? Or you can say to them, well, hey, your numbers are off. How are you doing? And what can we do to help you? Right? It's a different approach, which will probably have a better result. And that's really what we advocate, to say, well, let's figure out what it is that's going on. It could be external pressures. It could be just, hey, I hit a brick wall. I don't know where to go from here. And I didn't know who to ask for help. And it's those type of things that we're hoping to capture before they become a real problem, right? Before they extend out. And that's a lot of what we're trying to build that trust so people can ask that question.
That's great. And I think it goes to the topic of, are you being reactive to the situation, or are you taking the time to actually respond to the situation? Exactly. Because it's also your responsibility, your ability to respond in that situation. And are you responding in a certain way that can bring everyone up, or are you just reacting to situations trying to put this person down or make them feel a certain way that's really not bringing, it's not bringing a positive outcome to the situation? if they feel
Exactly.
like it's on them to do it by themselves. Um, Great. I mean, this has been a great discussion, and I know we want to get to the last question, which
Okay.
is, we keep talking about technology, and I know in
Yes.
the given world today, all of us are connected to technology 24/7, including our children
Yes.
and our younger generation of folks. Can you offer any guidance on how they can prevent some of the adverse effects of
Yeah.
technology on their bodies, their mind, their energy? And we talked a lot about authenticity.
Yeah.
We know for sure there's lots of science out there and research that, with social media and all the different ways people can connect without really being in person, it might have an adverse effect on children or adolescents really not understanding who they are
Sure.
authentically, because maybe they're trying to be the most popular person online,
Right.
instead of in person and just being comfortable with themselves. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this is a great topic, and especially because technology is here to stay, right? This isn't going anywhere. And social media and these type of communication platforms and different ways to communicate are also here to stay. Our research and has shown that, and you'll see this everywhere. If you have a group with thousands of people, right, which is what largely social media platforms are, inevitably it's going to be noisy. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be popularity contests, all those type of things. But if you can limit that down, and this is part of the approach that we take, is that if you can limit that down to a small group that have a common mission of some sort, right? So it's a group, and you'll see different groups that are out there that, hey, we all believe in this, or we're a hiking group, or this and that, and there's some media platforms there. You'll see less of that noise and much more productivity. And there's a lot of factors behind that. So really what we try to do is say, when you communicate with people who you've got a vested interest in. And when you think about your team, your work team, or a social group that you're with, if you guys, if there's a book club or a golf league or whatever those type of things are, it's a smaller set. It's a common, interest, and you'll find those things can be very productive. And when you start to get to know each other in those avenues, they're very productive. Whereas if you go to one of the larger platforms and, it feels like you can say hello and suddenly there's a fight, right? So there's an argument. Um, I love technology. I love the fact that, if I need to find a direction or find an image of something, I can find it right away. We use that to get to know each other. One of the great things we do is to say, hey, show me your favorite food, or show me the last place you were on vacation. And the easiest way to do it is just do a quick Google search and say, I love cheesecake and I want sushi, and then post that picture. And I mean, from a technology perspective, that's just so brilliant. I mean, think about how just what's probably involved underneath, but how easy that is for us to do. So yeah, my guidance is, I don't want to see. I mean, for me also, it's difficult for me to disconnect from technology, and
Sure.
I enjoy it like everybody else does. But yeah, I mean, it's if we can stay away from the large arguments where there is no outcome, there is no the energy that you put in has to have a positive outcome.
Right.
And in many of these platforms, it doesn't matter what you say. You're not going to change somebody's mind. You're not going to. It's not going to move the needle. But
Right.
when you're in a small group, let's say it's your family group, you can have an impact, and that's where I think the focus should be. Right, keep your social media groups to a small place, and use technology as an information source. And it's an amazing, brilliant information source. I think the only other negative is, one thing we've done, it's very easy to be talking to people in a room, having get together and have everybody sitting around the table, sitting on their phones. And that's just human behavior. Very easy to do. And that's just something that we just need to, as people and as relationships, we just need to legislate. When you're in person, be present, right? Be
Right.
who you are, be authentic, and try to talk to the people that you're with, not the people that might be in the ether, right? And right. So yeah, I think just those things. It's a complicated subject because, like, I hear people say, "Hey, could you take a vacation without internet for 30 days?" And I look at it and say, "I don't think I could do it." I just don't think I'm that person that can do it or would want to do it. But yeah, it really does need this place and very difficult to do. I'm hoping in the future we get more controls on this, and it's not even I don't want top down legislative control, but really just individual behavioral control of how we can how much we interact and waste our energies on that. So
sure, yeah,
really I think it's there.
Maybe not 30 days, but maybe 30 minutes a day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Have a technology-free zone or time period.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Yeah, I mean, we're surrounded by it. So yeah,
yes, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Vivek. This has been a fabulous discussion. I know we could probably go on for another 3 days on all of these topics. You have so much to offer the audience. Could you please tell the audience where they can find you if they would like to reach out to you?
Yeah, great. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Vivek Nigam, and that's probably one of the best ways. But our websites, we've got two of them. BeRemote.com is our company website. Feel free to reach out there. And if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about our product, it is called ReTeam, ReTeam, TEAM. And the website for that is joinreteam.com. And go there, drop a quick note, contact us. I'd love to have a conversation and tell you more about what we're doing and some of the statistics we've been seeing. And I'm really proud to say I feel like we've been making an impact, and would love to share that further if we can.
All right, wonderful. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We will have all the links to the podcast as well as Vivek's information below. And see you all every third Wednesday of the month to focus on your wellness and lead your life well from within.